Hi everybody, my name's Zoe and I'm one of the team members in Coventry School Nursing, and we're here today to do a session with you about puberty and body changes that you're going to be going through as you get a little bit older. So as well as me, there is also Emma, and we've got Tim as well. So between the three of us, we're going to be taking you through the next couple of slides. Okay, so how the session is going to work is we've got a presentation for you that we'll talk through, and then there might be times where we ask your teacher to pause the video so you can have a chat on your table or with your class, and then we'll come back together and we'll have a look at some of the answers or some of the things that we've thought of. So the first thing that I'd like you to do is, as a table or in the class, is have a think about some ground rules that you think might be quite important for this session. So they might change a little bit to what you would have in a normal lesson, because we're talking about things that perhaps are a little bit sensitive or things that might feel quite personal. What kind of ground rules do you think are going to be important going through this session? So if your teacher pauses now. Okay, so we've had a little think about the ground rules and we'd like to share with you some of the ones that we think are important. So the first rule that we would like is that actually we really respect everybody in this room, and I'm sure you will do that in your lessons anyway, but it's really important that you listen to what everybody else has got to say and that you respect what everyone else is going to say. So we understand that this might make you laugh a little bit, some of the words you might make you feel a bit embarrassed and you might get a little bit giggly, and we know that, and that's okay. But what we don't want you to do is, if somebody's talking, laugh at what they're saying, because that might make them feel a bit like they don't want to talk then. So really important to respect each other and what everybody else is saying. The second ground rule that we think is really important is, throughout this session, when we're talking about all these different things, is that you're using the proper words for everything. So proper words for your body parts. So if you think about the words that you would use if you were going to go to the doctor, so what words would you use? And if you don't know them, that's okay, because as we go through, we'll be talking about them, so you'll know what we're talking about. The third really important ground rule for us is that you don't talk about anything that's too personal. So we don't want you to tell stories about your sisters or your brothers or yourself, okay? So we try to keep it so we're not talking about personal stories. And then the last rule, or the last thing that we've thought of, is we've decided to do this session with you is because you're getting a little bit older now and you're going to be going through puberty yourself. So we think this is a really good time to talk to you about some of those changes. But some children that perhaps a little bit younger than you, so if you've got younger brothers and sisters or perhaps younger people in the school, we don't want you to go out and talk to them about some of the stuff we spoke about today, because they might not be ready to talk about those sorts of things and they might find it a little bit daunting or a bit embarrassing. So we talk about things in the room, and if you've got any questions, we're going to try and do a question and answer session at some point. You can ask your teacher questions, or if you've got someone in your life, an adult that you trust, so that might be your mum or dad or carer or anybody who's at home for you, any question you might think of, you can ask them as well.
Hi, my name's Emma and I'm here to continue with the conversation around puberty. Now, I imagine quite a lot of you are getting quite nervous around this afternoon's discussion, and that's quite normal. Puberty is a natural part of growing up, and essentially it's the changes that we go through when we change from being a child to an adult. Now, very, very quickly, just pop your hands up if you're feeling a little bit nervous about the changes. Now, obviously I can't see you, but I imagine there's quite a few people up with your hands up, and that's really, really normal. And actually some of the people with their hands that didn't go up, I bet you're feeling a little bit anxious. So puberty is a natural part of growing up, but before puberty you have childhood. And when you're first born, that's your first day of childhood. And when you're born, all that you can do is wee, poo, cry, drink milk, and burp. And that is really, as you're born into this world, that's all you can do. And as you grow through childhood, you learn to smile, to sit up, to say mum, brother, dad, etc. And all these little changes, everyone gets really excited about. The first steps, learning to ride a bike, that's another big change in childhood. And all these changes we comment on and go, oh, isn't it really brilliant that little Johnny has now learnt to write his name? And that's childhood, and that's exciting. And puberty is just the next step. The only difference is it doesn't get commented on. So if, when you go through all the changes and you start to, spoiler alert, sweat a little bit more, it doesn't really get commented on to Great Auntie Nellie. So I suppose the question you're asking is, why do we go through puberty? Well, the small answer is to grow into adults. So our bodies change from being a child to an adult, which means that we can have children of our own one day if we choose to.
So puberty begins in our bodies when chemicals called hormones are released into our bodies. So the hormones will cause physical changes to our body, and they will also cause changes to our brain and the way we think and our emotions, which can affect how we feel and sort of what we think. So have a second now and have a little think about whether you know what those hormones are called. So there is 2 hormones for females and there is 1 hormone for males. So either you can pause now and you can pop your hand up or have a chat amongst the class. So if the teacher pauses now. Okay, so hopefully someone's been brave enough and popped their hand up and we've had a bit of a discussion around what we think those hormones are called. So for the female, the first hormone is estrogen, and the second hormone, which I will try to pronounce, is progesterone. Okay, so for males, the other hormone is testosterone. And these hormones are responsible for everything, all the changes that happen. So everybody starts puberty at different ages, and boys and girls usually start them around different times. So for girls, they might go through puberty or start going through puberty anywhere between the ages of 8 to 15. And for boys, it's normally a little bit later, and that's around 11 to 15. But everybody's totally different. So you might start a little bit earlier and your friend might not. Everybody in your class will be different about what sort of age they start to go through puberty. And puberty doesn't happen overnight, so you won't wake up one morning and suddenly you've grown a beard, or suddenly you've sprouted and you've grown really tall. Puberty takes place over several years, so these changes will happen really slowly. And everybody starts totally different times, and everybody's totally different.
Hi, so as Zoe said earlier, my name is Tim, and I'm here to help talk you through some of the changes that are going to happen over the next few years. So what should be happening now is a teacher should be handing out a sheet of paper with the drawing of either a boy or a girl on it. And what we'd like you to do is fill out as many of the changes that are going to happen over the next couple of years. Now, some of these changes will happen for boys, and some of them will happen for girls, and some of them will happen for both. However, the important thing is that we want everyone to know what's going to happen for themselves and their friends and their family as they grow and develop in life. So what we'd like you to do now is fill out the sheet of paper you've been given with as many changes as you can think of. There are some arrows there which might help you with where some of them are happening, but you can either write them or draw them, whatever you feel comfortable with, and we'll see you again in a few minutes.
So hopefully now you've all had a chance in your groups or as a classroom to have a little bit of a chat about some of the changes, or you wrote them down. So we're going to have a little look at the changes now. These are some of the things that will happen for boys and for girls and for both of you. And then after this session, we'll go into a little bit more depth in a boys session and a girls session about these changes. So don't worry about them too much if you're not 100% sure. Okay, so let's have a look at some of the changes that both will go through first. So the first change that you might experience is having hair that gets a little bit more greasy a bit quicker. So you'll have to have a shower more often and wash your hair, because you're getting more oil, your hair can get greasier a little bit quicker.
Okay, so the second change is that some of us grow. Now this can happen at different points and over different amounts of time for every individual. So, but over the next few years, you start to have what we call a growth spurt.
You'll also get, like I said, you get a bit oilier in your scalp, so your hair gets greasier. You might get oilier skin as well, and that means that you might get spots a little bit more often. So it's really important to make sure that you're washing your face a little bit more often and that you're using something like a cleanser. So you can get these in the supermarket. You can even have a little look next time you're doing the food shop, mum, dad, or whoever you do your food shop with. You can go and have a look down the aisle and see what cleansers are there. There's even specific cleansers for teenagers, so that help with spots. But one of the important things is don't use soap or things that you use to wash your body, because that can make your skin a little bit irritated or a bit dry.
So in addition to oily skin and to spots, you also sweat and start to sweat more. So we'll be talking a bit more in depth in a little bit about this, but it's important that we start using products to help us smell nice and keep clean and fresh when we start to sweat more.
You'll also experience mood swings, so they aren't particularly nice, and we will talk about it in a little bit more depth. But as you go through puberty, you might find that you're experiencing lots of different feelings. So you might feel quite angry, you might feel a little bit tearful, a bit upset, you might feel okay, and all of these changes can happen really quickly, and it's all about those hormones that we spoke about. So they surge through your brain and they make you feel lots of different ways.
In addition to this, you also tend to get hair start to grow on parts of your body that isn't the top of your head. Now, boys tend to get more hair down the trunk of their body than girls do, but everybody will start to notice that they develop hair. Now, this can be on your arms, on your legs, on your chest, under your arms, and also as your penis, testicles, and vagina starts to develop, you start to grow hair on them. Now that hair is called pubic hair and can often look slightly different than the other types of hair that we grow.
So hopefully you got some of those ones, so that's for both boys and for girls. So having a little look at the changes that girls will go through. So one of those changes will be that you'll start to develop breasts. So again, like we said, it doesn't happen overnight. This will happen sort of slowly. And some people will have larger breasts, smaller breasts. You might find that one breast is larger than the other. Everybody's totally different. And then you'll also find that your hips might start to widen, and that's, like we said, as you get older you might choose to have children. That's to help with that. So when you have a baby or you're growing a baby, your hips are wide enough. And you also might experience some vaginal discharge. So this isn't anything to worry about. It's usually just a little bit of fluid. It can be white or it can be clear, and you might experience this just before you come on your period, but it's nothing to worry about. And then you'll start your periods. And again, that's something we'll talk about a little bit more in depth after the session when we split into boys and girls.
Okay, boys, so we get hair start to grow on our face. Now, this is often styled, but can be shaved off. You can let it grow. It really is a personal choice. In addition to this, your shoulders may well start to broaden, and your testicles that currently are about in the middle of your abdomen will drop down into your scrotum. Now, as this happens, it can have a slightly alarming effect on your voice because it starts to drop and deepen. This can happen over time and can often be a little bit croaky and can cause some changes that are not just it dropping straight away. After your testicles have descended, we start to produce sperm as boys, and this comes as a liquid which sometimes is released at night accidentally, and this is more of a practice run for when it's needed for making children in the future, but can be a bit alarming the first time it happens. We'll talk about that a bit later in a different video, but it's important to know that that can happen.
So now we've looked at some of the changes that are going to happen, we thought it might be helpful just to have a couple of top tips and things that, as things change, you might want to have a think about. So the first thing is going to be, like we said, you're going to be sweating a bit more, and actually it's really important to make sure you're having a shower every day or a bath, or even if you're just having a wash over the sink, just making sure you're washing under your armpits and then, you know, the rest of your body as well. Also, because you're sweating more, we would probably recommend that you start to wear an antiperspirant. So you might have heard this being called deodorant or similar things. And antiperspirant is what you spray or you roll under your armpits to help stop you from sweating as much. So there's different things out there. Again, it's when you go in do your food shop, have a look down those aisles and see what's out there. But there are different ones. Some are just nice smelling, but actually don't stop you from sweating. So it's really important to find the antiperspirant. So that's the one that stops you sweating. But you can find ones that do both, that make you smell nice and stop you sweating. It's really important to make sure that you're washing your clothes more frequently. If you are sweating a bit more and then you go to wear that top the next day, you might find that it smells a little bit. And I'd like to think you're all doing this already, but make sure you're changing your underwear every day. And then lastly, again, like we said, you're going to be sweating more, especially when you're doing things like PE. So make sure you're washing or whoever's at home for you is washing your PE kit regularly, and that hopefully if you're wearing that antiperspirant, when you come back in after PE, you're not going to be smelling too much, so your teachers don't have to sit in a classroom with everyone that smells.
So the very last bit about our presentation is just going through how you think you might feel about going through puberty. We've looked at all the physical changes, but actually all these hormones make a really big difference to how we think and how we feel. And it changes us from thinking as a child to thinking more as an adult. And some of you may feel very excited about this and very happy because you're going to be grown up. Others may feel a bit worried, a bit sad and quite angry and confused. And you may feel a whole host of these emotions all at the same time. And this is actually quite normal. So these mood swings, it's really normal to go through this roller coaster. And the film Inside Out actually explains all the different emotions that you can feel at the same time really, really well. And I imagine you've probably all seen it, but just go and have a bit of a revisit, because parents may complain about your mood, that suddenly you're really happy and the next minute you're just crying and you don't actually know why. But this is temporary, it settles down, but just remember you're in control of your behaviour. So just remember that if you do something that you really wish you hadn't done, that you just apologise for. Thank you ever so much. So now we've got, this presentation is coming to the end. We've got 2 videos remaining. One of those is around boy changes, and my colleague Tim is going to explain a little bit more depth about what these changes mean for the boys. And the second one is around, for the girls, managing puberty, managing periods and sanitary towels and all the other products that can be used to manage menstruation. Thank you ever so much.